Welcome back, mathematicians. We're back for math workshop number 9. Let's look at what we've learned so far in this unit. We have learned how to count up to 1,000. We've learned how to round to the nearest 100 and the nearest 10. We've learned that we can use a number line to give us a gauge of where those numbers round to. We've also learned how to add by place value. We're still inside of this unit, so we're going to learn more. For today, we're learning how to use addition starter problems to solve other problems. What we're looking for you to do is to use all those strategies you know to help you add 2-digit and 3-digit numbers, breaking apart by place value, adding up in chunks, and rounding. Remember, your word wall are words that are very important. You should write these down somewhere so you can always refer to them anytime you do math. And this is our strategy that we're going to test out and try today. This is also making those landmark-friendly numbers, which we're very familiar with from number talks. Okay, so let's think about the previous concepts that we learned in this unit. We learned how to round to the nearest 10 and 100. We learned how to show 3-digit numbers, the value, different ways. And we learned how to solve problems by breaking atoms apart by place value and adding up in chunks. So as we think about those, we can visualize 100, 10s, and 1s. 100 equals 10 tens. 10 ones equals 1 10. Keeping that in mind, I understand the value of my numbers whenever I look at them. If I have to round up or down, I'll use that gauge of the midpoint to tell me whether I go rounding up or round down. If the ones place for rounding to the nearest 10, if the ones place is 5 or more, I'm going to round up. If the ones place is 4 or less, 4 or below, I'm going to round down. And I'm going to keep that in my mind always, anytime I'm rounding. Rounding to the nearest 100, we will use the tens place. If there are 0 tens, we use the ones place to round to the nearest 100. So let's review how we view place value and what that is. Each digit has a value. So when we're thinking about the 3-digit numbers, they have 100, 10s, and 1s. The number 246 has the value of 2 hundreds, 4 10s, and 6 1s. This is the same as 200 plus 40 plus 6 in expanded form. Not from, form. Each digit has its value. So this is how I'm visualizing it. I'm going to fix that. Okay? It also can be shown different ways. Just so we understand what's inside of all those hundreds, 100 equals 10 tens. So if I wanted to break down one of those hundreds, it would give me more tens. So I would have 14 tens instead of just 4. I will still end up with the number 246. So now when I'm thinking about rounding numbers to the nearest 10 or 100, I know that I'm going to look at that ones place to help me figure out which way I should go if I'm rounding to the nearest 10. So there's a 6 in the ones place in the number 246. If I draw the number line, that gives me a visual that 246 falls behind 5, which means it's more than 5 in the ones place, which means I'm going to round up. 5 or more, round up. So my nearest 10 would be 250. What if I had to round to the nearest 100 for 243? Rounding to the nearest 100, I know it's going to be 200. I look at the tens place, and the tens has 4 in it. And if there are only 4 tens, I'm going to go down because anything 4 and below rounds down. So I'm going down to that previous 100, which was 200. I will not round up to 300 because the tens do not have 5 or more tens. So now I remember how to round. Now, using everything we know about place value, rounding, I'm going to create starter problems that will help me figure out the actual sum to an equation. Let's say we have the equation 138 plus 317. So let's say I just want to round both numbers to 100 just to get an idea of where that final sum is going to go. I can use 100 plus 300 because 138 rounded to the nearest 100 is 100. 317 rounded to the nearest 100 is 300. So 100 plus 300 equals 400. That gives me some part of the answer. That tells me that my final sum is going to be around 400. Now I could also just do one add-in and say one add-in rounded to the nearest 100 and add it to the other add-in without doing anything, right? So 317 I'll leave alone, and I'll round 138 to the nearest 100, which will be 100. I can add those together, and it'll give me another number that probably is closer to my actual answer. So 317 plus 100 equals 417. Okay, so that's telling me my number is going to be around that number. Now, what if I want to round to the nearest 10? Okay, so 138 rounded to the nearest 10 is 140, right? Okay, 320 comes from 317 because that's really close to that 10. So I use my ones place to tell me to round to those two numbers to make these add-ins. And that answer up. So 140 plus 320 equals 460. So that tells me a clue. My actual final sum is going to be close to 460, in between 417 and 460. This starter problem, one of these starter problems, is really helpful to getting my final sum. I like the one where I rounded to the nearest 10. It seems like that gave me a round number that's close to my actual sum. When I add 138 plus 317 and it equaled 455, I knew that had to be the answer because my starter problems were very close to 455. The most helpful starter problem was the third one. 140 plus 320 equals 460. That starter problem helped me get a really good idea of where my final sum was going to be. And it was very close. 455 is only 5 away from that starter problem answer. So I used place value, right? Hundreds, rounded to my hundreds and my tens. I used rounding to help me create my starter problems, to help me think of where my final sum was going to be close to. All right, now it's your turn to try it. Think of this equation and think of 3 starter problems for 164 plus 208. Take a minute. You can pause the video if you need more time. Good. So, did you think of rounding 164 to the nearest 10 or 100? Did you round 208 to the nearest 100? That could be a starter problem. So let's see. So you could have rounded 100 plus 200 to 300 because that equals 300. You rounding the add-ins would give you that. Another starter problem, you could have left one add-in alone and just rounded the other one to a 10. 160 plus 208 equals 368. So that tells you it might be around that number. It should be. Or you could have rounded to the nearest 100 for the other add-in and left the other add-in alone. 164 to 100 plus 208, 308. So the final answer was 372. What was the most helpful starter problem here? Yeah. Good. Number 2 was the best starter problem. It got you really close to that final answer. So you know your final answer must be 372. Other mathematicians, like you, also use estimation and place value, but they also use making a friendly number for one of the add-ins to help them add. You can definitely do this also. For this problem, Catherine made 46 a friendly number added it together, and just subtracted the 4 that she added on to make the friendly number. We do this all the time in number talks. That is another strategy you can definitely use. All right, so you're going to look for your assignment from Savvas. If your Savvas is not working for you, you can write all of your answers in the Google Docs that I attached. Um, I also have screenshots of all of the sheets that were from Savvas. So if your Savvas does not load, don't worry. Do all of your answers inside of the Google Doc. Okay, mathematicians, until next time, see you later. Bye.